Hey class, here is our 8th lecture for our class. This is the final lecture, and I just wanted to do some uh, wrapping up for you to help tie up any loose ends that you might have, and just give a few more comments about last week's lecture. So, as we saw in our primary source review that we did last week, and out of the context of urbanization and this, out of three contexts: urbanization, the Protestant establishment, and also the advent of more secular views of thinking about the Bible, whether that be evolution, textual criticism, and things like that. All three of those things brought about what we like to call the fundamentalist controversy of the 20th century. And what we read last week was by a liberal pastor during this time, Harry Emerson Fosdick. And basically how everything broke down was there was the fundamentalist side and then there was the more liberal side. And they both had contrary ideas of how the church should interact with the world and how the church should view doctrine and how the church should interact with the poor and needy around them. So obviously, we're being at Moody, we come from a more fundamentalist perspective, but I do hope that reading Harry Emerson Fosdick last week helped you to understand both sides of the story for the fundamentalist controversy during this period. If you'd like a resource that gives you more information in much more detail about this, you can read a book called by Mark Noll called Faith and Criticism. Once again, that's Mark Noll, Faith and Criticism. He does a really good job interacting with this time period. Obviously, no history course would be complete without a mentioning of the two world wars and the Great Depression. The First World War changes culture largely, and also the church, in that before this time with industrialization and the hope of man, there's a lot of talk about like the sky's the limit, humanity can do whatever, we can fix all of our problems. With the advent of World War I, the optimism kind of fades, and hope in the goodness of man fades as well. And then, obviously, right on the tail of that, the Great Depression, which brings about, how do I want to say it, a more humbler, simplistic mindset in the world, especially contrasted with the decadence of the Roaring '20s. And then finally, World War II, with the advent of states that are now militarizing themselves on whole new levels, and tons of vets coming back, starting families. We see the beginnings of suburbanization in outside of urban centers during this time. You have all these vets coming back that want the American dream. They want a house, they want kids, they want a wife and the perfect job, which kind of leads straight into the 60s and 70s and 80s, which, you know, depending on how old you are, you might have been alive during that time. But as we get closer to the modern period where we actually are, it becomes more and more difficult to interpret data and information and say, you know, to analyze history in the way that we have been doing for the last 1900 years. So I don't want to make too many comments about history past 1960 because it's a little bit more fresh and a little bit more difficult to view with a objective mind. Not only that, you know, most of the people that we would be talking about would still be alive, and so it becomes a little more historically hairy to talk about. So, I have enjoyed teaching this church history course. I've enjoyed having each and every single one of you. I feel like you've all grown a lot with your writing, with your thinking, and with your knowledge. Feel free to email me if you guys have any questions, if you'd like more clarification and wrapping up with stuff, or if you'd like just book suggestions on specific topics to learn more about. Best of luck with your final exam, and if you have any questions about that, once again, feel free to email me. Thanks, guys.